to Can't Stop the Pop, the podcast where we, that's me, Craig,
and me, Matty,
do a deep dive on a song from the 90s or noughties.
So, Craig, what song are we doing this week?
We are doing Phixx, Hold On Me. What are your immediate thoughts on this?
Great song. Loved it when it came out. Think it still stands up today because it's got that 80s throwback vibes. And I love the ridiculously homoerotic video, basically.
I mean, I think we'll spend a lot of time talking about that, but...
Yeah, we will. But before we get into the song, who are Phixx and why are we talking about this song?
Okay, so Phixx were the boy band from Popstars, the Rivals, that weren't in One True Voice. So
Yes.
they're like the runners-up to the runners-up, which is a slightly bizarre place for them to exist. But this was their lead single. And this actually, by the time they released this single in October 2003, One True Voice had already split up. So things happened quickly.
What a bizarre and brilliant time in pop music. Like, I've said it a couple of times already, but I think Popstars, the Rivals, might be one of the best, if definitely the most chaotic of any of the ITV reality shows they ever did. Like,
I
do you
agree.
just think about all of the iconic moments? Like, even like Davina McCall hosting it, it's just brilliant. Just the amazing people that came out of it. Obviously, Girls Aloud, fantastic, but just like everything to do with One True Voice, and the fact that both groups had a group formed from the people that didn't make it into it, and genuinely, I think that this is. We've said it before in a TikTok. You said that it was the second best debut single from a group after Sound of the Underground from this TV show, which is true. It's true.
Yeah. It is a very bizarre situation, but yeah. So Phixx, they took their sweet time, and I think rightly so. Let One True Voice do what they did, and then they signed with the same management as Liberty X, and they recorded this and released it as their debut single. And like you said, what stands out to me is it sounds really different to anything that was really happening in the charts at the time. Now, I would say, yes, you had Holly Valance doing The State of Mind. There was this 80s electropop revival. But in terms of TV talent shows, a song like this was really different, really different.
It just seemed like they had a real vision for what, as a boy band and a sound that they wanted to do. It was so bold. I know I made a joke that it was a homoerotic video, which it is, but that sort of 80s noir, like vampire bondage sort of vibe that they went with for the kind of album campaign, that's bold. That's great as well, because it's not... Often when a boy band gets launched, I say more often than not, I think it takes a while for like their sort of style and sound to come through. There's too many to name. I think most boy bands you can say that with, and I feel like most great boy band debut singles tend to have been ones that it's not that they could have been sung by anyone, but it's that they just fit into a very commercial sphere of what is happening at the time. I talk about people like Blue, people like The Wanted. It's like their debut songs were great, but they were so chart friendly for what was going on at the time. Yeah. This, Hold On Me, in a very out there video with an extremely 80s synth pop sound, like this was like something from like like LaRue or like Little Boots, or people that were like pop left field indie, and this was like a reality TV show act. So I loved it.
Yeah, I think what really stands out to me about the production, it may be because they were on a small label. So this was very much this was not a big budget, big launch for them. The thing I really like about the production is it sounds authentically 80s. It doesn't sound like a noughties pop act riffing on an 80s sound. I could imagine this song emerging from the 80s. Like the production is so authentic. It's a little cleaner than you would get from the 80s, but in terms of the instrumentation, there's these sound effects, these plinky plonk sound effects, this squelchy bass, and it's really credibly sounds like the 80s. And as a reintroduction to Phixx, each member gets a solo verse. So again, it's quite well thought out in terms of let's reintroduce this act. People will recognize them, but let's actually show what they can do. And oh my goodness, hooks for days.
So many hooks.
So many hooks. So many good hooks in this song.
Like from the verse, literally from the verse, the melody is so catchy. Like that descending, da, 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 like that descending scale that they've got in it. And then the chorus, it's on the one hand, it's kind of textbook in how to create a good hook, but it also just works so well in that you've just got a repeating yeah. And then we go into the title of the song, which is a chant. It's almost like a pub chant, but you put it in an 80s synth pop song. It's interesting you say with the production. It isn't melodically at all like it, but there's a real similarity to like the Pet Shop Boys. In the way that's the reference that I would go with it. And particularly, I'd say their cover of You Are Always on My Mind, that kind of da-da-da-da, da-da, that vibe to it. There must have been in the studio, I can't imagine that there wasn't because it's not copied, but it's definitely referential to that style and that particular era of like Pet Shop Boys, 80s, Human League, that sort of vibe. And I love it. I think it's great. And I remember it being it felt like a real moment. And looking back on the stats and the history of it, I genuinely thought it was bigger than what it was. Like, we'll get to the stats eventually, but I thought that this was a much bigger hit than it was, and I think it deserved to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, they really got a good launch considering where they were coming from.
Yeah.
But of course, I suppose the song is great, but what most people are going to remember about this is the video, and and perhaps by extension the Top of the Pops performance, which we'll also discuss. The video. How do you summarize this video?
It is like bondage that you can put just before the watershed. Like, it's that kind of thing of, in theory, it doesn't show you anything in a video which other pop videos haven't done, especially female pop videos. I mean, God, you compare it to like some Pussycat Dolls videos and it's just like, well, what's the difference? Was it's because it was a boy band, and it's also because it was a boy band that you've got to try and think of the appeal of who is going to buy a boy band record. And typically, a record company is going to go, we're going to gear this towards teenage girls. Now, you're in a weird pocket here, because I do think that they were right to go, you know what? No, we're actually going to go for a slightly different demographic, and we're going to go for, the late 20s, early 30s gays. Because they were still watching these reality shows. They were still following these groups. And we're the ones still talking about it now. Like,
that
genuinely.
Is very true. I like to think they also thought, what we need is we just need to convert a new generation of men into homosexuals, and this is how we're going to do it, because I guarantee...
Girl, it worked. It worked.
I guarantee someone will listen to this episode and comment, this is the moment I knew. because what they do is that each member has their own sequence, and you've got I think the one that really jumps out to me as how quite risque this was. You've got Nick, and he's on this he's in a morgue, obviously, on a gurney, and he's like strapped down, and there's this woman brandishing a knife around him, but he is like he's bruised, and but he's like breathing it like it's not I wouldn't say it's conventionally sexy. Like they are writhing around, and they are like contorting themselves almost to try and not like it's really like pushing it out there in terms of what they're showing.
It's not sexy in a typical way. It's definitely going for that slight arousing, slight on the edge of body horror sort of thing. And as you say, you've got influences pulled from everywhere, and like all the boys are topless, dancing with various stages of bruises and blood on them, and
yeah.
But that's also a theme that they would go through with the other singles from the album, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not making
really
that up. So when they went into Love Revolution and they went into a cover of Wild Boys, there was still this sort of cyberpunky, futuristic, sexy vibe. So this was definitely like, it was a vision, and they just went hell for leather, like 10 out of 10. And right, so that's kind of the makeup of the video, and that, or they're all sort of stuck in these bondage situations. And what's the what happened on Top of the Pops, Craig?
Well, they essentially recreated it, but firstly they mimed, but they didn't have microphones. So that again is another throwback to the 80s when acts would go on Top of the Pops and just lip sync without even pretending that. So they do that, and they're all dressed at the start, and then after the first chorus, their clothes get ripped off. Although I have to note that only 3 members of the group have their tops taken off. The other 2 are at the back, and I do think that's quite noticeable in the video as well. Like you've got 3 members shirtless and writhing around, and then one of them shut in a box, and one of them's wandering through a dark corridor. It's really hard to not see that when you notice it. But they got chains around their necks, and they're on chairs, and they're basically bound. And it's a bondage show on Top of the Pops in 2003.
It's like it's a full-on queer burlesque show. Like, I watched it back and I was like, I just love that this was on television over 20 years ago. Yeah. And this is over 20 years old now. And it was just so out there. It's funny that you say the thing that only 3 of them had their tops off. I do wonder, be great if we could get some insight into that conversation, because yes, it was a different time for pop music, and art and acts were treated differently, but you know that there was still conversations that would have been had about, are you comfortable with how much skin you're going to put out there? I don't think anyone would have been forced, at least I hope not. But yeah, just it's such a bold pop song. Love the production, love the hooks. Nice production on the vocals as well. It's really it's nice, as you say, that everyone gets their own little line. Although I do think that's kind of typical for a boy or a girl band's debut song. It's always very much like, we're going to give them all a line, but then as we go through the studio, we're going to see who's going to be the lead in this group.
Yeah, that's true, and it's nice to hear their different styles as well. And that's one thing that Popstars the Rivals didn't allow acts to really do, was to express their individuality. But you hear some really nice there's a rocky drawl in there, and there's some nice soul. There's a really diverse collection of vocals in there. Yeah. Which is great. Now, Top of the Pops, this performance was so risque that it got complaints. Now, only 8 people complained, though given it was 2003 and given the slide that Top of the Pops was on, that probably represents about 50% of the audience watching at the time.
Yeah.
But they complained and said this is totally inappropriate. And the complaints were upheld, and the BBC ran like, yeah, in hindsight, it probably was a bit much, but what are you going to do? It's been broadcast now, so we won't do that again.
I just love that. Also, I'm slightly obsessed with people with like complaints about things. I love random obscure Karens just like going online and just being like, "Oh, this was not appropriate, babe." It was appropriate. It was appropriate to a whole generation of young homosexuals that were coming out of the closet. In fact, this literally was the time that I came out of the closet. So, like, great. Thanks, boys. Thank you so much.
There was your parents calling up, going, "Do you know what that performance has done to my
Do you
son?"
know what that performance has done? He needs to go back to listen to those Girls Aloud records. He loved those girls. Sorry. Well, I absolutely love it. But that's what we think. So,
Yeah.
Craig, tell us, as the man with the plan, the man with the stats, what happened when this song was released? And tell us about the album campaign.
So, the song peaked at number 10, which you said you expected it to have been a bigger hit. But I would say it's really difficult to know what the expectation was, given what happened with One True Voice, and also where boy bands were at the time. I would say number 10 for the time was probably a pretty big success for them. If you think this is around the time of D-Side and Triple Eight, and boy bands aren't fighting over the top spot anymore, they're fighting to get into the top 10. So all in all, I think probably a reasonable result. It didn't sell loads. It wasn't in the top 200 biggest sellers of the year. So it was indicative of where the boy band market had gone. Or it just disappeared. But so this was the lead single, and they followed it up with Love Revolution and a cover of Wild Boys, which I could never quite decide whether that's genius or awful, but I sort of love it. And I think I always felt like they just sort of plateaued. This was them. All the singles performed consistently. This was their only top 10 hit, but and then Peter left, and then the album Electrophonic Revolution, incredible title, didn't get released in the UK, and then they eventually disbanded. So it did feel a little bit like they were all in with this, and it was like, okay, where do we take this next? What can we actually do with this? And I think you look at this, it's exactly the same. Look at D-Side and Triple Eight. They were all ended up in roughly the same situation. They just couldn't really turn that success into anything substantial.
Well, yeah.
Which is a shame.
You said it was the boy band model at this point was sort of just like falling away. I'd say I mentioned them before, but I feel like Blue were the only successful boy band around this time. But also timeline wise, they were kind of going out anyway. Like, and I just feel, it's just indicative of the time. And I just said it before that I thought it was a bigger hit because I was convinced that it was like top 5. Or I didn't think it was a number 1, but it should have been. But I do think that, it's indicative of the time. And it's a weird time in the charts, that period of like, I'd say like 2021 to like, 2001, to like 2004 is such a weird time. And we discussed why in other episodes and things like that. But I loved it then. I love it now. And I enjoyed the follow-up singles. I didn't think they were as good. But I just remember having a lot of love for this song and a lot of time for it. And I think it still stands up today.
Yeah, I agree. And the biggest compliment I would pay to it is that there are loads of reasons why my One True Voice's debut single wasn't this. There is no way they would have gotten away with this.
Can you imagine?
But in a sort of parallel universe where Sound of the Underground goes up against Hold On Me, I genuinely think it would have been a much closer contest. And I'm not saying that Girls Aloud shouldn't have won, but I think it would have been much closer. And I think potentially, so that's how good this song is and how good the whole vision of Phixx was compared to One True Voice. But like I say, that the fact that they weren't One True Voice is in part what allowed them to push things as far as they did.
But you just hit the nail on the head where I'm not going to bang on about my favorite group of all time anymore. But, with Girls Aloud, Sound of the Underground is one of the most genius debut singles that's ever been released because it so subverted your expectation of what a girl band could sound like and what a girl band from a reality show was going to sound like. So, which is why you put it up against Sacred Trust. It's just like, guys, like, this is boring and dated and old and there's just nothing new. Whereas Hold On Me, an 80s throwback with a really out there bondage video, I think it could have been more of a head-to-head battle. And in many ways, these are the two songs that I remember from that era of that show. Yeah. Well.
Plus cheeky song, Touch My Bum, let's not forget.
But, I mean, lest we forget, cheeky song, Touch My Bum, cheeky. But yeah, Phixx, Hold On Me, absolutely love it. If you want to listen to the song, you can find it on streaming. And where can they find us, Craig?
So Can't Stop the Pop has a website where there are over 500 reviews, including this song, which you can find at can'tstopthepop.com.
We are also on social media. I am Matt_Atkins9 on Instagram. And you can also find us on TikTok at Can't Stop the Pop Podcast, where we basically do this, but in 60-second clips. We do reaction videos. We do random little stories about random little bits of pop.
I am Can't Stop _ the Pop on Instagram and TikTok. One day that will just flow, but it's not yet. We are also Can't Stop the Pop on YouTube because we have some video content now.
We do. Do subscribe to our channels, get in touch, let us know what you think of the song and what you think of the show, and please leave us a review, but only a good one wherever you get your podcast from.
Thank you so much for listening, and join us next time for more
Can't Stop the Pop.